Hi everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Risk with Dr. Naveen Agarwal, where each week we talk about a topic related to risk management of medical devices. I'm your host, Naveen Agarwal, principal and founder at Achieve, where my personal mission is to help you achieve success in risk management. In this episode, I'm joined by Raimund Laqua, who is the founder and chief compliance engineer at Lean Compliance Consulting. We are talking about compliance as an obstacle or an opportunity. And in this episode, Raimund is discussing how we can change our perspective on compliance and view this as an opportunity to actually deliver business results by meeting all stakeholder expectations and requirements. We had this conversation in front of a live LinkedIn audience as part of a LinkedIn audio event. You're about to hear a recording of our conversation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Please share, your personal story, Raimund, and any, pivotal moments in your career that have shaped your career, shaped your thinking, who you are. We would love to hear that from you.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, what time it is, wherever you are. Naveen, thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. I think it's a great way to end a Friday as we start the weekend chatting about things that are important. Certainly compliance is important to me. I realize it's not important to everyone. And that's probably part of the reason why I have founded a company called Lean Compliance. Let me just give you a quick background of who I am and what I do. I'm a professional engineer, studied electrical computer engineering in Canada, just outside of Toronto, McMaster University in Hamilton. And, I guess you could say that I found compliance the long way around. Mm-hmm. I kind of stumbled into it and spent most of my career started off with building test systems for testing integrated circuits at both the wafer level and packaged goods, which I guess is kind of like compliance. Mm-hmm. So we were testing against specifications and product specifications and checking to make sure they conformed. So I guess that was compliance back then. And then kind of moved into, the whole stream of document management, product lifecycle management, ISO standards, and so on. And so I worked as a consultant across North America, across different industries, and learned quite a lot. I learned a lot from working with, companies like Johnson & Johnson and Abbott Labs and, other, oil and gas pipeline industries as well. And I learned that everybody has a problem with compliance, and everybody views compliance pretty much mm-hmm. as a necessary evil. An evil nonetheless, though. And I thought, well, is this really the case? Like, what's going on here? And in fact, Naveen, you would know this in previous conversations. The people that know Lean will be familiar with this concept that Lean views things like inspection, which is what compliance does mm-hmm. to some degree, mm-hmm. as a waste.
Yeah.
And something to get rid of and ignore. And so, it's no wonder that this is kind of an uphill battle in a sense. Was there a different way of looking at compliance? What was compliance really trying to do? And that's what that's been my mission, is to kind of correct this blind spot that I noticed.
So I'm actually very curious then, Raimund, because, I'm an engineer too. And as engineers, we don't like the word shall. We like to experiment, we like to explore, we like to solve problems. And, fundamentally speaking, just as a mindset, I'm very curious as an engineer, how did you become so curious about compliance that you started thinking about this? And the way you describe this is fascinating to me. that, hey, most people look at it as a necessary evil, but there is another side to it. And I still remember the comment you made to my post where you said, hey, innovation happens under constraints. That's the best way innovation can happen. Can you help us put those two together and help me understand as an engineer why I should be excited about compliance?
Yeah, I'll try. Well, let me say it in a slightly different way, to maybe somewhat of a provocative way, but perhaps helpful here is that my argument is this: is compliance creates the opportunity for innovation. Compliance creates the opportunity for innovation. It isn't an obstacle. It, in fact, creates the opportunity for us to innovate. And if you like, I can try to unpack that for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So, back in the 90s, when I guess ISO 9001, the quality management standard was just coming out, I was involved in working with manufacturing, and we were trying to roll that out and adopt that new standard. And there was a lot of pushback back then, right? It was something which let me remember. It was something that we added on to the end of the production process, right? Rather than doing stuff earlier on, we were kind of seeing this as an extra step, an extra process, all these inspections and quality control. And there was a lot of pushback and a lot of resistance. And we're saying, why is that? It seemed that we were pursuing different goals, right? We had the business, and we had and we had compliance, and business had its objectives and its priorities. And of course, manufacturing, was committed to, shipping on time and meeting production schedules and all these other steps, inspection, quality control, corrective actions, right? They were all tacked on at the end, and no wonder, and they caused delays, and no wonder compliance was seen as a tax on production and an obstacle to get rid of. If we didn't ship on time, we would end up losing customers. And that was a real concern. But I don't think I don't think that's changed. I was just talking with a company, a couple of days ago, a high-tech company in Finland, and same problem. Competing priorities, competing goals, nothing's changed. But here's what's happened. Compliance has changed, right? Since the 90s, and for companies that manage quality today effectively, they're experiencing less defects, fewer delays, shorter cycle times, and even experiencing customers that are more satisfied with their products, right? Instead of losing customers, which was the concern and the risk, was they were gaining them. Imagine that, right? So here's the thing. Even at the edge, at what we call the event horizon, the last line of defense, compliance had an impact, right? It set a standard. And this is a constraint, you could call it, right? This is part of our conversation.
Yeah.
And you could evaluate the current level of conformance. Back in the day, it was quality requirements. We still do that today, of course. Not the technical requirements per se, right? We were already doing that. I spent much of my career on kind of doing that as an engineer. But we were compliance added another benchmark. And that's what compliance does. It sets an ideal for us to achieve better quality, better safety, better security, better sustainability. And this standard, this ideal creates for us, it exposes gaps. And here's the thing, right? where there's gaps, there are now new problems to solve. We now have new objectives to improve. We even to innovate. And Taiichi Ono, he's one of the father of lean. Some of the people on the call today might know him. He was known for saying, without objectives, there are no improvements. Without a standard, there are no gaps. When there's no gaps, there's no problems to solve, no need to innovate. No need to innovate. And that's the power of compliance, right? It creates this opportunity for innovation. All those other requirements, safety, security, sustainability, and the list goes on, right?
Yeah.
We don't see them the same way as the products requirements. We see them as obstacles, but really they're the same thing. They're all requirements. They're all things which engineers love to solve, right? Give me a set of constraints, right? We always work within laws, right? That constrain us. We work, in the laws of physics, right? Try not to follow the laws of physics and see how far you get.
Yes,
right?
that one makes sense. That makes sense. So what I'm hearing you say really is, look at a standard not necessarily as something you need to comply with, but rather a benchmark, a standard, a requirement you should strive to achieve.
Yeah, exactly. As an opportunity to improve.
Right. So it's not that the standard is necessarily saying comply, but they are saying, here is something that is expected from a world-class company. We have to perform at this level. And now you have a choice. You have a choice to either hide your, sore spots and dirty spots through inspection, or fix the problem at hand through an engineering solution, right? I think that's what it's kind of a mindset question. Is that right?
Yeah, like if you can take all those requirements and put them in your set of product specification requirements and add them to it and say, okay, now we have a problem to solve. We need a solution to meet this particular customer need in a safe way, in a secure way, in a quality way, right? These are requirements nonetheless. So, we need to be, using design thinking and systems engineering and model-based engineering and digital twins and risk-based thinking, all of this to help us innovate, to come up with solutions to real-world problems. It's just the set of requirements have changed.
I love this.
Right?
I love this.
Right? And
is that something you actually talk about in the context of what you call lean compliance? Is that what the language looks like?
Yeah, it is. So what we do is we, lean compliance is really an interesting juxtaposition, right? Those two things should never be in the same sentence rather than connected to the same business.
Yes,
right?
Agreed.
Right. Lean compliance. What are we talking about here, right?
Yeah.
But so here's the thing: is lean has a particular purpose. It improves efficiencies for sure. It removes waste, right? And here's the thing: by improving efficiency, we create the capacity to be proactive and to be able to spend our efforts on other things that are important, on safety, on quality, and so on. So lean has an important role as an enabler, right? Now, but the question is, what's the waste?
Gotcha.
And that's what I've changed. Is the waste is all the effects of uncertainty, risk, compliance risk, quality risk, security risk. Those are the wastes that we need to eliminate and get to the root cause of. And so what we're doing is introducing the idea that waste is more than just the things that we've been, motion, not using talent, right? And all those things that we look at from a lean perspective. Those are important. We still need to do it. But on a broader picture, whenever we are in misalignment to our goals and our objectives, and we're not achieving mission success, right? And we're not measuring up to our standard. Is we are wasting time and energy that could be used somewhere else and in towards achieving better outcomes, and also avoiding the outcomes we don't want.
That is fascinating. Such an interesting perspective. Raimund, I want to thank you for explaining that to us. I think we are ready to have some conversation on this, and I know she is already requesting to speak. So
okay,
I'm gonna bring him on our stage. And guys in the audience, this is the whole point of our discussion today, right? Please don't hesitate to request to join us and share your thoughts. It doesn't have to be a question. It can be a comment or an insight or anything on your mind. So with that, Shri, I want to welcome you, and please share what you have in mind.
Thank you very much. I am so happy I was hearing what you had to say about implementing lean compliance. I do have, I frequently run into quality folks that assume that these standards are restricted. And I live in the regulatory world, and medical device world, so nothing is prescriptive, at least from FDA's perspective. Do what's best for your technology is what they keep preaching. And so I wanted to get your opinion about how prescriptive do you need to be under lean to the standards that you're talking about. From what you had just spoke about, I don't think you need to be really prescriptive about, like if ISO 1345 or something says thou should do this, you should. Thou should.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. There's a lot there to unpack. And so let me see if I can frame things a little bit for you that might help. One thing that we do is we look at obligations in four ways. And that this helps us. We look at the prescriptive rule-based stuff. Clearly, that's something that still exists in a lot of legislation and so on, in regulations. That's important. But there's also management-based obligations, and that's another element to it. Then there's the performance targets. So in certain industries, we're obligated to achieve a particular outcome, performance level of environmental emissions, perhaps as an example, by certain in 2030 or 35, we're supposed to achieve certain performance levels and so on. This is where all the zero goals are: zero emissions, zero violations, zero injuries, zero fatalities. All that stuff kind of goes into those things. And then we have the outcomes based regulations that want lower risk, better outcomes for patients, for the public, for society. So by looking at it from that perspective, lean can help us deal with things at the prescriptive process level, but we also need to look at it from the management level. We also need to look at it from the program level, which is governance level. So we, all those four things work together. And so what we look at is a lean operational model to help kind of look at this thing as a system, using a systems thinking so that we achieve the outcomes, we achieve the, let's say the outcome, the obligations. We meet all our obligations across all these domains and dimensions. And that we're trying to be more comprehensive, more holistic in our approach. And lean can help us with that.
So Raimund, what I'm hearing you say is that lean in the context of lean compliance doesn't mean to make your procedure slim. You have fewer forms, you have fewer templates. What you are saying is that apply lean-based thinking to meet all these obligations. One of those obligations is compliance to regulatory requirements, but there are other requirements. Is that am I understanding correctly?
Lean is so this kind of the means and the ends question.
Yeah.
The ends of lean is meeting customer requirements, right? And fundamentally, those are stakeholder obligations, right? And anybody that has a stake in what we're doing, our customers, our suppliers, all of that, right? And we're trying to meet all those obligations. And if lean helps us to be more intentional about that, and eliminate all the waste. So the value stream, we need a compliance stream. We need to see value all the way to the obligations, meeting those obligations, because the compliance is the outcome of meeting all our obligations.
Yes.
Right. It is better safety, better quality, better security. Right. It is that, and unfortunately we never get to a conversation about how to realize those outcomes. We're still kind of looking at checking boxes off.
Yes. So Shri, I want to actually invite any follow-up thoughts or comments you have on this, because this is certainly an interesting topic.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I guess my question was a much more ground level from a compliance perspective, right? So I do believe that you have to be careful that you don't let the regulations overburden your needs, right? As you pointed out, user needs are important. And for a tongue depressor, do you need like a 820 level quality systems, or you need to do a full 14971 risk analysis and blah blah blah, and that's where I think the problem comes into in the implementation. And if lean can help that get around that thinking, that would be something that should be preached, I feel like. And so I mean that's where Raimund was really talking about how, in the top level, how do you handle lean? I was more talking about, going bottom up. And
got you.
Yeah. Well, that's helpful. Yeah.
So I think that, I know we have a couple of other folks waiting as well, but where I'm kind of landing with this conversation is, requirements are requirements. They don't tell you how to do it. And it's the how part where you have to think from a lean perspective, not just looking at what's written in a standard or a requirement or QSR, for example, but how to meet all objectives. I mean, that's where I'm landing with this. But certainly, I look forward to hearing more from David and Ed here. So David, I'm going to let you go next. You've been waiting patiently. Please unmute your mic and share what you have in mind. David, can you?
Am I
Yes.
unmuted?
Yes, you are. We can hear you now. Great.
Sorry. Thank you, Raymond. I have maybe 100 questions. The one I landed on, and then as you were talking, I came up with another. So if you don't mind, a two-parter. The first one is very general. How do we get executives on board to realize that this literally is the recipe for how to achieve their goals? And then the second one is, you said the word means versus ends. I'm a big believer in strategy and tactics, but at the end of the day, it's the actions we take and the decisions that make the difference. And we spend all this time looking at KPIs that are averages and things about the past that really don't help us understand the path to take. Mm-hmm. If you can comment on those two things, I would appreciate it.
Okay, so to the first point, how to persuade leadership that that compliance exists to improve the probability of mission success. Fundamentally, it's about contending with uncertainty and risk, primarily operational risk. And if I knew I wish I knew how to persuade leadership to take that goal, to understand that that's part of what we're trying to do with lean compliance, through awareness, through education. And one of the things that we do to help with that is that we have a 12-week program I guess you call it the 12-step process. But it's a 12-week program. And, I've done engineering studies. I can, go in and evaluate your programs, do assessments. And I find is that without leadership support, it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to sit on the shelf. So what we do is we invite leadership to be part of the 12-week program. And so we become educated. We learn about how to do this in a lean way and to meet up goals, kind of the new way of thinking about compliance. And then when we talk about recommendations and assessment, it all makes sense now to them because they understand what this looks like. Before they didn't even have the words. We're saying the same words, but we were across purposes. So that's one way that we do it, is just by inviting them to participate in kind of program investigation and development and awareness, and just conversations like what Naveen's doing today and elsewhere is just, getting the word out that compliance has changed. It's all about risk now, and risk mitigation and improving addressing operational risk.
So Raymond, in that context,
I didn't get to the second one, so sorry.
But before that, I think you mentioned the word risk, and in that context, you feel your conversation with leadership becomes a little bit easier when you frame compliance in the context of risk, or does it become more difficult?
Well, they're always concerned about risk, right? So yes, it does. It does. Yeah.
Because they understand risk. And if you frame it in the context of risk and really, I've heard this term, least burdensome compliance from the FDA or risk-based compliance. I've heard all this terminology. I think all that is telling us is compliance basically means you have to figure out a way to meet requirements in a way which is best for your business. Nobody's telling you how to do it, right? So you take whatever approach you need to take, and maybe lean-based thinking also comes there.
Yeah, there's two sets of obligations. There's the ones that you're compelled to do.
Yeah.
And then there are the ones that you decide to do, right? Based on the fact that your stakeholders, your goals, your objectives, and those need to be managed and contended with as much rigor as operational processes exist today across the other parts of the value chain.
Now, David, second part of your question had something to do with means versus ends, right?
Yeah, can you still hear me?
We can hear
basically
you.
We spend a lot of time measuring whether we achieved something, but very little about what we need to do to change that.
Yes.
Yeah. So what I help clients, help people do is to, when you combine the means with the ends, you need to have answers to compelling answers to 5 questions. Where are you going? What's your destination? What outcomes are you trying to achieve? It's number 1. Number 2 is, what's your strategy to get there? Do you have a plan? How are you going to get there? That's the means. Third question is, what do we need to support that strategy? What capabilities, what competencies, what capacities do we need to support the strategy? Number 4, we need to understand what obstacles, what are the risks, what do we need to counter, and I mean also opportunities as well. And then the 5th question is, how do we measure our progress in something that's meaningful, that the stakeholders understand in their language. So that gets rid of a lot of fluff, like measuring things I think is okay, but they're not meaningful to people that are decision makers. So how are we going to manage our progress that we can provide confidence that we're going to meet all our obligations, achieve all our objectives, and how do we measure our progress that we're advancing in that assurance?
So maybe that is why, Raymond, what you were talking about, involving leadership in this conversation through your facilitated program is where it starts, not where like
it's-
what we need to comply?
It starts with it's what we call, instead of forecasting, which we do a lot, it's backcasting. We have the destination in mind, and we backcast from there to say, okay, now what do we need to get there?
Got you.
Based on where we are today.
Fascinating. Okay, Ed, I know you've been waiting patiently, so I want to invite you now to share what you have in mind. Please go ahead.
Okay, this has been an interesting conversation. First, I want to point out there's different definitions of the word risk. And we've been talking about the ISO 31000 definition here, which is business oriented. In the medical device world, we also have product safety risk, which is a different topic and is achieved using a different standard, ISO 14971, of which I've been on the committee for 23 years. But let me start back with an earlier thing. You mentioned getting management in the world. I was in a company years ago where we decided to implement Kaizen. And the very first project, we convinced the CEO to participate in the project. And the thing that really got everybody's attention was a welding process that we were working on. And the way the process was designed, the welder had to get on the floor on his back and do an overhead weld. And the CEO was on that team, and he ended up on the floor doing the overhead weld himself to see what the difficulties were. And from that point, that first team on, they made sure that there was some of the top management involved in every project. So they could, and it was very successful, as you might guess, because they were involved right down at the ground level. And if you can achieve something like that, you will have success. Getting management buy-in is the hardest thing there is to do in many of these projects. But now let me move on to standards. I helped develop IEC 60601 third edition. The second edition was very prescriptive and very limiting, and IEC had decided that the standard needed to be less prescriptive and more flexible because technology was advancing so fast, there was no way to keep up with the standard. So the change was from prescription to the current method of here's what the best practice is this, and here's how here's what you need to achieve, but it doesn't say how you achieve it. It's up to you to develop the process to achieve something, and then you have the flexibility also of determining maybe this requirement doesn't apply to our product because with a short rationale statement, you can explain why you're not doing that. ISO 13485 was developed on best practices from industry, and it followed on from 9001. 9001 was developed from best practices. Design control is a perfect example. That all came about by studying the process of design and where there were successes and where there were failures, and coming up with those methods that were successful in achieving the goals. And then they leave you the flexibility of working within those constraints to achieve those goals because these are the best practices. And 14971 was built on risk science. And if you look at 14971 and compare the standard to aviation, nuclear, chemical, other industry risk management systems are much the same. And they've all been designed to get those outcomes that we want, that safe product. I always tell people in the beginning of my classes, and I had one this week, what is the goal here? the goal is a safe and effective product. Well, what does that mean? Well, let me tell you, when you design this product, you do risk management as if you are going to be the first patient to use your device. And I start that with a slide of a patient laying in a bed that's connected to 29 different medical devices in the background, and trying to figure out, in today's medical environment, how do we make sure that the product is safe for the patient? That's what we're trying to achieve, safe for the patient, and then also the user, our property, data now, cybersecurity, and then AI is entering the picture very rapidly. We've got all these things to consider in developing this product that is safe and does give the user the benefit that they're seeking. So 14971 is now risk benefit.
Yes.
So achieving the maximum benefit at the lowest risk.
Yes.
So you have those constraints you're operating within, and you need to develop your own system for doing that. And you need to eliminate, as Raymond has indicated, the waste from that system so you can achieve it at the lowest possible cost in the best possible time.
Yeah.
And you got to use the right tools at the right point in the process to achieve that. And I can talk on about this forever.
But this is awesome. But Ed, you brought it all together in my mind. I think you brought it all together. This is why we do it. Compliance is not the end goal. The end goal is safe and effective products.
Exactly.
So I love it. I love your perspective. I really appreciate that, Ed. And thank you, as always, for sharing your deep insights with so many years of experience behind you. So guys, we have talked a lot. We are already above our time limit. So I'm going to touch upon a few housekeeping items, and then I'm going to invite Raymond for some closing comments. First of all, thank you for joining again this week. And this is going to be every week, every Friday at 11. You don't have to wait for registration or anything else. If you are interested in these conversations, please put that on your calendar. Every Friday at 11, even if you don't show up, you can catch up on the past recordings. And actually, I provided that link to you in a comment on this event link that you should have. So go ahead and subscribe, and you will be receiving the recordings of the past events. The second thing I would say to you is that all of you, without exception in the audience, have a viewpoint, have a perspective, have experiences that we would love to hear from you. And you should feel free to contact me and raise your hand and say, Naveen, I would like to come and join you as a guest speaker, and the door is open. Because everyone, without exception, has something very nice and interesting to share. So I invite you, please reach out to me anytime. And I think the final thing I was going to tell you guys again is, please tell your friends. Tell your friends about your experience. And if they would be interested in joining, tell them to come and join, because we are all trying to learn from each other. With that, I want to thank all of you once again. And Raymond, I want to invite you for some closing thoughts.
Yeah, great. Very, very much appreciated the conversations and hearing from where people are at. And unfortunately, we didn't have time to answer all the questions. But let me leave you with this. Compliance is a tough sell, right? So one of the things that why am I doing this? Why is this important? I talked with a CEO for a company I worked at, many years ago. I asked him to talk about, safety and quality and explain that to me from his perspective. And he said this to me, and I'll leave you with this. He said, where there is care, you will find quality. Where there is care, you will find safety. Where there is care, you'll find security. And it's that motivates me. The people that I've been working for and helping, and people here on the call today, no doubt, are people that care. They care about people. It's about people and achieving better outcomes so that we can live lives that we'd like to live. And it's a pleasure to work with people that care. And if the C in compliance means anything, I would say that it means it's about caring. So we care. So I'll leave it with that.
Oh, Raimund, this was just awesome. You cannot believe how many notes I have taken already on this sheet of paper in front of me, but what a way to close this. Awesome. Thank you so much again for coming on and sharing your expertise. Thanks everybody for joining again and sharing your feelings. I know many of you are giving us thumbs up and sharing on. So really love this. I love this energy and I appreciate your engagement. I hope to see you again next week. Have a good weekend ahead, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.